Born the 27th of February in 1991, Sean Strickland did not come into a welcoming world. By his own account, home was the worst place to be, as his father was both mentally and physically abusive to Sean and his mother day in and day out. The influence and impact of a bad home is absolutely undeniable, and Sean wasn't the exception. Strickland as a child could not stay in one place and was not wanted at any of the schools he transferred to. Strickland and chaos went hand in hand, causing him to be unable to get any semblance of an education, even being told by a teacher that he was, quote, the reason why prisons were built. Seeking something to latch onto, Strickland became affiliated with neo-Nazis and would adopt their racist, xenophobic, and other extremist beliefs.
Angry. It's funny, I actually went through like this weird like neo-Nazi white supremacist phase when I was younger. I got kicked out of school for like hate crime, like all this crazy shit. But I was just like, I was so angry, and I had a lot of fucked up influences in my life that it felt so good to fucking hate something, you know. Like I would walk down the street, you know, just with a knife or like a rock, hoping to kill somebody. Fortunately,
Sean Strickland found MMA at the age of 14, and it was the closest thing to salvation he could have hoped for.
And when I started training, I realized, man, like you're just fucking angry. You're just fucking angry. And so I fell into like this weird like hatred, like neo-Nazi thing. And I started training when I was around like 14, 15, and it was like just therapy, you know. It was like just help me with all my issues. I seen the light. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like I started connecting the mental dots of why the fuck I feel the way I feel.
Just 3 years after beginning to train MMA, Strickland made his professional debut in the 2008 King of the Cage promotion, winning by submission and going on to become the middleweight champion after an impressive 9-fight winning streak. As of 2012, Sean had defended his title 3 times and now had a 13-0 record when he was called up to the UFC. In the UFC, Sean would extend his streak by 2 before losing to Santiago Ponzinibbio in 2015. Up until his last fight, his title fight, Strickland's record stood at 27-5-0, with 15 wins and 5 losses in the UFC. UFC 293 was meant to be headlined by a main event of an Israel Adesanya title defense against the #1 middleweight contender, Dricus du Plessis. Up until this point, Adesanya had held a record similar to GSP, having lost only 2 of his over 20 mixed martial arts contests, and having already avenged one of these losses against his longtime boogeyman, Alex Pereira. Having started out in kickboxing, Adesanya had amassed a very impressive record of 75 wins with only 5 losses, but the fact remained that he had still lost twice to the same man, Powhatan Alex Pereira. After Israel's transition to MMA, specifically to the UFC, he quickly rose up the ranks, and after a 5-match win streak, including an interim match, he beat Robert Whittaker to become the middleweight champion of the world. Having defended his title 5 times, Adesanya was an extremely dominant champion, but it wasn't enough to distract fans from the only stain on his career thus far. In 2021, Alex Pereira made his debut in the UFC, and after just a couple of fights, challenged for the title. Powhatan was outclassed for the majority of the fight, but in the final minutes of the 5th round, he made use of his very own great equalizer, a left hook straight from hell, which eventually led to a TKO. Due to his dominance, Adesanya got an immediate rematch just a couple months later at UFC 287, where he would turn Pereira's confidence against him, landing a devastating hook of his own after a combination from Pereira to send his longtime rival and boogeyman to the canvas. After reclaiming his belt and having finally beat virtually the only person on his heels, Adesanya found himself at an all-time high, and what many believe to be his peak. With Alex's move up a weight class to light heavyweight, there were no more comparisons, no more pressures, and no more doubts. On top of this, Dricus du Plessis was not able to compete for the title due to injury, leaving Adesanya's next title defense against #5 ranked middleweight Sean Strickland.
It's been announced that Dricus is out of the fight with Adesanya. It looks like it could be Sean Strickland next. What's your opinion on that matchup?
Yeah, that's fun, isn't it? I think everybody's excited for that. I seen a video with Sean sparring with 2 teammates in the octagon. That's pretty much the guy. I'd love to fight against Sean. I think it'd be an amazing fight. I like the fact that he stands there and he's ready to fight. He wants to stand in the middle of the octagon and fight. Does he have the ability to beat Izzy? I can't see it.
I'm rocking with the champ, man. He's too smooth. He's too clean.
I think if Sean beats Adesanya by a miracle, I don't think he has a miracle in him.
I think Israel's gonna win that one.
Do you see it? It seemed that no one except Israel Adesanya and those who were familiar with Strickland believed in any kind of upset. And in Vegas, it was the same way. The odds going to the fight had Adesanya at a -600 favorite, while Strickland was a +450 underdog, basically meaning that a $100 bet on the challenger would pay out a whopping $550. In the early hours of the UFC 293 main event, a nervous Strickland would walk out to cheers from the loud New Zealand crowd and would watch as the champion entered the octagon. The fight began the only way it could. Sean's forward marching style put Adesanya on the back foot immediately. Although this isn't usually usually a good place to be for the average fighter. Stylebender's fights and wins over Pereira, Costa, and Derek Brunson have clearly shown us that not only is he comfortable fighting on the back foot, it's actually where he's most dangerous. For anyone who was watching the fight live, the feeling of anxiousness and anticipation was almost suffocating. Due to Strickland's low guard, squared stance, and tendency to parry as a means of primary defense, a feint to a drop of the hands causing the challenger to lose by head kick KO was the threat that loomed at all times. Having said this, however, the reliance that Israel Adesanya had on his feints and the overextension of his opponents would, for the first time, work against his favor, as what we thought impossible came to be. In the last 27 seconds of the first round, Israel fell for a Strickland feint, getting caught with a straight right cross to the chin, essentially a counter to his own counter. The hit dropped Adesanya, and Strickland dominated for what remained of the first round. With newfound confidence and working behind the strong jab that had won him the last round, Strickland continued his march forward, pressuring Adesanya and frustrating him by constantly making Israel miss and checking nearly all of his notorious leg kicks. To the shock of literally everyone watching, the second, third, fourth, and fifth round went exactly the same as the beginning of the fight. The champion, who was known for at minimum outpointing and beating his opponents by decision, was being beaten at his own game. Renowned as one of the best, if not the best stand-up striker in the UFC, the champion was losing on his own turf, in front of his own people, in the way which everyone believed he was going to win, and there were no excuses. Throughout the entire fight, and ever since the first round, there was arguably no point throughout the fight in which Israel Adesanya was beating Sean Strickland. If I were to have said this to you just a week before the fight, it would have been minutes before I would be forced into a mental institution. Yet there it was. Sean Strickland heard what the world was saying about him, and answered with one of the most impressive performances we have ever seen. The tension of the entire fight, ever since the first round, has finally burst. Strickland gets the better of the champion, Israel Adesanya. In the final 30 seconds, he can't help but explode and release all of the energy and tension that has been pent up by screaming at Adesanya, hitting him hard one last time and raising his hands in victory. Sean Strickland was underestimated by everyone, and now he stands alone as the plus 500 champion. Unquestioned, and of course, undisputed. So this is my first time doing an outro. Don't really know what to say here. If you guys like the video, go like the other videos and go watch them. They're kind of ass, but you know, that's how it is right now. And yeah, subscribe or something. I don't know, man.